Oh, hi. You might have noticed it's been a really long time since I've uploaded a video to this channel. Outside of YouTube, I work two jobs, which at times can make my life very busy and exhausting, and producing videos sometimes has to take a back seat. Despite my voice sounding like a 12-year-old, I'm a 30-year-old millennial that can't always dedicate the time I used to pastimes like gaming. Speaking of things I don't have time for, it's getting really tiresome. The current gaming landscape has been irreparably damaged by seemingly every publisher around forcing their studios to make the next Fortnite or Roblox, despite many of these devs having a rich history in crafting high-quality, story-driven single-player experiences. Rocksteady, anyone? I'm not saying I don't play any games that would be considered live services at all, either. Just that I don't understand how every publisher these days thinks I have an infinite amount of free time on my hands. On at least a semi-regular basis, I play League of Legends, Tekken 8, Infinity Nikki, Deadlock, and Supervive. I also have a mountain of single-player games I'd like to experience in my collection backlog, so the idea that every other week there's some new slop that's designed to take up every second of my free time makes me want to rip my hair out. Beyond my own lifestyle, surely there isn't enough room in other people's lives, even children's lives, to support this unending onslaught of live services. Do they genuinely expect people are going to play 20 of these things at the same time? Or, even more laughable, leave the games they've already sunk thousands of hours into for their inevitably derivative title? I think not. It's one thing to say, hey, here's this cool, crafted 20 to 30 hour experience we made. Give it a try. It has a beginning, middle, and end all wrapped up in a nice bow for you. It's designed to be a meaningful, finite event, not unlike watching an engrossing movie or reading a good book. It's a completely different thing to be berated every 2 to 3 weeks with the latest Life Consumer 3000, expertly designed to rob you of every waking moment, separate you from your family and friends, and threaten to beat you up for your lunch money like a cartoon villain. No thanks, I'm good on any of those. I do understand that a handful of successful live service titles make more money than some small nations, but it's very apparent that only a handful of these juggernauts are able to operate at that scale simultaneously. Pouring all of your resources into making the next infinite hour game almost always fails. And really, this isn't anything new either. If you're 30 plus years old, you'll probably remember the days when the MMORPG was all anyone could talk about. Well, at least in regards to PC gaming, that is. World of Warcraft sat upon the throne as the undisputed king, and many a publisher got it in their head that they could also create their own golden goose. Growing up in the early 2000s, I can't tell you how many times I heard the term WoW killer in reference to a new MMO that had just launched. And guess what? The premise never came true. In retrospect, it's absolutely laughable to look at some of the games that were given that moniker. Remember Age of Conan and the hype that surrounded that title at launch? Probably not, I'm guessing. Fast forward 20 or so years, and we're still in the same loop of monkey see, monkey do, just on a scale and at a cost that would have been unimaginable back in the day. If you were annoyed with the lazy recycling of ideas from game devs before, now it takes the better part of a decade, and the better part of $1 billion to make one of these things. It's like getting a bottle of whiskey that's been aged 10 years, but when you open it, it's just fermented cow piss. It's really no wonder that we're finally, after all this time, starting to see some semblance of a market correction. I think it's fairly safe to say that, generally speaking, with some notable outliers of course, we've entered an age of great apathy towards most of these new titles. Massive multi-million-dollar projects come, die, and leave without even penetrating the public consciousness anymore. This isn't everyone hating on Call of Duty every year, but the game makes billions anyway. I think that the game Concord, which you're probably sick of hearing about by now, served as the come-to-Jesus wake-up call for most of the industry, or at least it's starting to appear that way. As the most expensive flop of all time, with varying estimates between $200 and $400 million down the drain, I think it caused a lot of executives to wake up from their fugue state and take a good hard look at themselves in the mirror. Maybe chasing this model that has lottery odds of success and steep penalties for failure isn't the best way forward after all. Just a few weeks ago, we learned that Sony put the brakes on an eye-watering number of live services they had planned, most of which make my head explode. Literally none of these things sound worth my time. Really, guys? A Horizon MMO? A Days Gone live service game? The original Days Gone didn't even sell well enough to greenlight a sequel. What are we doing here? I sincerely hope this trend will continue and the industry at large can make a return to primarily making excellent single-player experiences that can be remembered fondly rather than looked back on in disgust. Take a page out of Nintendo's book and actually care about your long-term image for once. Or at least a man can dream. As always, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Do you agree, or are you frothing at the mouth for the next live service title and think I'm just a grumpy old man yelling at the clouds? If you've made it this far and haven't already subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, thanks for watching.